Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, all eyes are on Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. So we'll take you there. That plus a whole lot more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, January 31st, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. Definitely appreciate that, man. Cannot tell you enough about how much the show has grown. That's because of you, Raider Nation. So thank you. And also shout out to my man, Ari. Without his assistance, matter of fact, without his hard work, we wouldn't be on YouTube. So shout out to my man, Ari, on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254 and the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. A lot of calls and texts about the quarterback position, a lot of calls and texts about the offensive coordinator position, and just the team in general moving forward. So we'll get to a lot of that coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, all eyes are on the Senior Bowl, Mobile, Alabama, one of the big all-star showcases for college football for all these athletes that are trying to be drafted on the upcoming NFL draft at the end of April. One of the big showcases, obviously the Shrine Bowl is another big one, but we'll focus today on the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. So in segment number 2, I'll tell you about the players that I'm looking forward to hearing the most about, seeing the most about, and doing the research on the most throughout the course of the week, guys that could potentially build their stock leading up to April's draft. That'll come up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always do, and we'll get right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on in the show. And as I mentioned, all eyes are on Mobile, Alabama, and the Senior Bowl. And that also goes when it comes to coaches, staff members, front office guys, like the Raiders' Champ Kelly. Hasn't been a lot of conversation about Champ Kelly since Tom Telesco took over as the GM. We all know that that was the job that Champ Kelly was trying to get. He was the interim GM for the 9 games that Antonio Pierce was the interim head coach. And unlike Antonio Pierce, who got the head coach position, the full-time position, Champ Kelly did not. So the Raiders have said that he is more than welcome to stay on as the assistant GM. He does have one more year left on his contract, and I think it was a really good sign when guys like Tashawn Reed and Vinny Bonsignore and others saw Champ Kelly in Mobile, Alabama on Tuesday. So Tashawn went on to say the Raiders didn't send GM Tom Telesco or head coach Antonio Pierce, but assistant GM Champ Kelly, national scout DeJuan Daniels, and others are on the ground. Strong sign that Kelly is staying on board. Also, defensive line coach Rob Leonard is coaching up on the American side of things during the Senior Bowl. But really good news about Champ Kelly. I kind of figured that he was going to stick around only because he had one more year on his contract, and there's not too many GM jobs that are still open. Matter of fact, there's only 2 head coaching jobs that are still open in the National Football League, and both teams have GMs. That's in Seattle and in Washington. So didn't really think that there was a good chance that he was going to leave unless he just decided, hey, I'm going to sit it out for a year, and then I'll dip my toes back into, the GM waters coming up next offseason. But as I've always been told, and I found out from personal experience, it's a lot easier to get a job when you have a job. So I'm not too sure how long Champ Kelly will be with the Raiders, if he'll be with the Raiders beyond this year. Hell, I don't know if Champ Kelly will be with the Raiders beyond the draft, right? He might be sticking around for now, along with some of the scouts, because when new GMs come in, sometimes after the draft is over, the old scouts that were there when the GM steps into place, a lot of times they do end up replacing them. So I don't know if Champ Kelly is doing the solid for the Raiders and want to stick around till after the draft. Maybe he does want to stick around for the rest of the year. I think it'd be great if he does. Think that helps with Tom Telesco to be a smooth transition, only because Champ Kelly knows the roster inside and out. He's been around the team for a while now, for multiple years, and knows what the scouts were out on the streets and out, all around the country, going to different college games and checking out different players, what they were looking for. So I think it would be a really good thing if he did stick around, but that's up to Champ Kelly. But I do think it was a great sign to see that he's in Mobile, Alabama, representing for the silver and black. Also, Tashawn pointed out that there was a very lengthy Facebook post that Champ Kelly put out on February 23rd. Matter of fact, Vinny Bonsignor, who's also in Mobile, Alabama, he pointed out that there was a lengthy Facebook post and actually put it in his article. And so when I went back and found it, it was like 2 pages long. It was pretty long, or it was like 2, I guess, screenshots, pretty long post from Champ Kelly. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I'll go ahead and paraphrase a little bit of it. He said, "Today I claim to have been a water walker. Where I'm from, folks don't typically get the opportunity to sit at the head of an NFL team. I choose to view the last 9 weeks of the 2023-2024 season as a tremendous blessing. I was able to lead an NFL franchise in turmoil and work to unify and galvanize the team. I was able to communicate, love, and support our staff. I was able to assist a first-time head coach in day-to-day operation. I was able to communicate with the team president and team owner. I was able to empower the team. We were able to finish at 5-4 in my time in the seat. And I was able to do all this while being authentically myself, who God intended and created me to be. I'm blessed. My girls are blessed. He won't allow me to sink," which I think is awesome. And that sounds like Champ Kelly to the T, right? From my conversations I've had with him, he's a very humble dude. He's a very faithful dude. And he's a guy that, understands the situations and really respects all of it. So he's not going to come out and put some, nasty type statement and, talking real reckless towards the organization. He goes on to say, "I'm disappointed the way things turned out today, but it won't shake my trust in the Lord. My faith muscle is strong. I'm tremendously honored and humbled by all the support, thoughts, and prayers over the last few days. It's been a trying waiting period, but your prayers lifted, encouraged myself and my family. For that, I love you." And again, it was a very lengthy post from Champ Kelly, but that was just a little bit of it that I thought it was important to go ahead and pass along. Also, I wanted to pass along some guys that participated in the Senior Bowl day one of practice that multiple people said had really good days or had really bad days. And how about Michael Penix? He was a Heisman Trophy finalist. Obviously, he played in the national championship game for the University of Washington. Vinny Bonsignor went on to say that he threw the ball all over the field. He showed touch, accuracy, and velocity. His arm talent is impressive enough to push him into the top half of the first round with a good week. The Raiders are scheduled to pick 13th overall. Are taking a long look at the Senior Bowl quarterbacks. It's worth noting Penix's performance happened just a few feet away from where Champ Kelly was standing. And Michael Penix is a guy that we've talked about quite a bit. I don't think anyone who watched him at the University of Washington had any doubt about his accuracy, about his arm strength, about the way that he can, put touch on the ball, what he can do with the ball. He has arm talent unlike any other, right? He's probably the best pure thrower of the ball in the draft, this upcoming draft. And the only issue he has is the injury history, the ACL surgeries, the knee injuries that he's had, and of course the shoulder injuries that he had. 4 years at Indiana, ended the season with 4 different season-ending surgeries. That's something to be concerned about. On the other side of things, another quarterback that could be there for the Raiders at number 13 is Oregon quarterback Bo Nix. Vinny said he had a rough opening day, was late on a few throws. It's also clear he doesn't have the same arm talent that Penix or some of the other top prospects possess. There was some talk this week that Nix could go in the top 10 selections. He's got some ground to make up after flashing just an average arm on Tuesday. So not a glowing review from Bo Nix, but the thing about it is, that was one day. He can come back today and have a monster day. He can have a monster day on Thursday. He can have a monster game on a Saturday. And you never know what the scouts and the GMs that are there in Mobile, Alabama will come away thinking about him. Of course, they still have the combine. This is just step one, but it is a big step because it's the Senior Bowl, and there's so many players that get drafted all the time coming out of the Senior Bowl. And one other guy that I wanted to point out real quick from the Senior Bowl practice day one, cornerback Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. My man Vinny said that he shined. He said the Raiders could look to add a cornerback this offseason since Amik Robertson's of pending free agents. Quinyon Mitchell is one player on their radar. Mitchell got his hands on multiple passes Tuesday and was effective in man-to-man and zone coverage. It's clear he combines physical gifts with a great understanding of the position. So that's Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo, cornerback. He's a guy to pay attention to as well. My final little nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, Max Crosby. He had a successful hand surgery on Tuesday. He posted a picture on social media of his arm in a sling, had the nurse right there next to him, and had a big smile on his face, and obviously showed that the surgery went well. And remember, this is just a few weeks after having a big-time knee surgery as well to repair his knee that we all know was bothering him pretty much the whole season. So Max told us that he had to get multiple cleanups after the season, and he did. So he's on path to be ready to rock and roll when it comes time for training camp. And you know he's going to be rocking and rolling well before training camp. But the knee surgery in the books, the hand surgery, thumb, whatever the case may be, that's in the books as well. Now it's all about the rehab process. And, of course, you know Max Crosby is going to attack it, no doubt about it. Coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, continuing with our conversations about Mobile, Alabama, and the Senior Bowl. I got a handful of players from the national team and a handful of players from the American team that I really want to focus in on. Make sure I ask a lot of questions to different people that are there on site to see what they're hearing from these different guys or seeing with these different guys, and think they're all guys that the Raiders could be potentially looking at as well at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. And we'll get right to that after I tell you about eBay Motors. And with passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and a whole lot more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. They have over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, you're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about some players that I want to focus in on this week while they're in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. Again, I'll focus in on the Shrine Bowl as well. I'm expecting to have Eric Galko, who is the player director, personnel guy at the Shrine Bowl, and it's in Frisco this year as opposed to Las Vegas like it's been the past couple of years. I expect to have him on my radio show later on this afternoon, so I'll be able to bring you some of the highlights from that and some sounds from Eric Galko on some guys that may be, standing out at the Shrine Bowl. But right now, I want to focus 100% on the Senior Bowl, and I want to take a look at the national team and the American team. I picked a handful of guys from the national side that I want to look at, and maybe you could focus in on if you're checking out the practices on NFL Network. If you watch the game on Saturday, you can do that, maybe do a little bit of scouting on your own, and just some guys that I'm looking forward to see what they're looking like. So on the national team, led by quarterbacks Michael Penix and Bo Nix. And, I've talked about those guys multiple times. Penix Jr. from Washington had 4,903 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 11 picks in 2023, played in the national championship game. Right? I really don't have to go on and on about him. His stats speak for themselves. Obviously, he's a household name. Everyone knows what he's able to do. Southpaw, has great accuracy deep. Bo Nix from Oregon, 4,508 yards, 45 touchdowns, and 3 picks in 2023. Really improved his game the last 2 seasons there at Oregon. Had a rough day on Tuesday as far as practice goes at the Senior Bowl, but doesn't mean he can't bounce back. Think he's done a lot of good things those last 2 years in college, and think he's going to be a guy that's going to go probably in the top 15 of the NFL draft. So clearly would be there at 13 for the Raiders if they stay pat. Also, another guy that I mentioned in segment number 1, thanks to Vinny Bonsignore, Quinyon Mitchell, Toledo defensive back, 6 career interceptions at Toledo and 2 touchdowns. Right? That's a guy that makes plays on the ball. That's something that, as you saw from Jack Jones when the Raiders claimed him off of waivers from the Patriots, the Raiders need guys like that, guys that have instincts to go get the ball, guys that can not only find the ball, but do something with it when they get it, right? There's something, I say it all the time, DBs win games. You got to have a guy that not only can make, plays on the ball and break up passes and, make it difficult on the wide receivers, but guys that can create takeaways, get the ball back to your offense. The Raiders, have one guy in Jack Jones for sure. Obviously, the instincts are there. Nate Hobbs has the ability to get it done. Amik Robertson, he is a free agent, so who knows if he's going to come back. He showed the ability to get it done. The Raiders did a lot better job in 2023 coming up with interceptions than they have the past 2 seasons when they only had 6 each year. They had 13 in 2023, so they more than doubled their interception production in 2023. They need to continue to get guys that are used to getting their hands on the ball. Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo could very well easily be that guy. How about a middle linebacker, Edifwan Ulafosio out of Washington? And it's funny, talked to that guy on my radio show on ESPN game night, and talked to him early in the season when Washington was kind of rolling, and just talked about everything that he had going on with the season, and if they had a chance to make it the playoffs, what it would mean to him. And he's a good dude, right? He lived in Las Vegas for a while. Where else did he live? Did he live in Canada? No, he lived in Alaska. Sorry, he lived in Alaska for a while as well. So he's in Vegas for a while. He was in Alaska for a while. Really good dude, and he's a hell of a player at Washington, middle linebacker, 62 tackles, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, 3 pass defense, an interception, and a touchdown. Ball production. I say it every draft season, right? Anytime we get in a draft conversation, look for the guys that are used to making plays. If you make plays in high school, a lot of times you'll make plays in college. You make plays in college, guess what? More times than not, you're going to make plays in the NFL. You're not going to find a guy that doesn't have production, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, 3 pass defense, an interception, a touchdown. You're not going to find a guy that doesn't have any of those kind of accolades. Also, he's going to get to the NFL, and all of a sudden it's going to become natural. It's just not, right? So that's a guy to pay attention to. Edifwan Ulafosio, Washington middle linebacker. I had to work so many times on saying his name, and it's funny when he got him on the radio. I was like, all right, man, break it down to me, man. Tell me how to say your name. And he said it so easily. I was like, man, of course you said it easy. It's your name. But he's a good dude. So definitely look out for Ulafosio out of Washington, middle linebacker. How about Roman Wilson, Michigan wide receiver? Obviously just won a national championship with the University of Michigan. 48 catches, 789 yards, and 12 touchdowns. The guy's got some wheels. I've talked about it before that I think that the Raiders need another wide receiver that can stretch the field, has big playability. Again, you make 48 catches and 12 of them go for touchdowns, you're doing something pretty positive. On 48 catches, he almost had 800 yards. Right, that's big time production right there. So if the Raiders are looking for another wide receiver, and oh, by the way, Roman Wilson had a really good day on Tuesday as well at the scout and not the scouting combine, at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. So another guy to pay attention to, Roman Wilson, Michigan wide receiver. So those are the guys on the national team that I'm gonna be focusing in on. What about the American team? Got a quarterback, Joe Milton II out of Tennessee. He slid into the role after Hendon Hooker went to the league and went to the Detroit Lions. He threw for 2,813 yards, 20 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's got a strong arm. I had my guy, Teron Davenport from ESPN on my radio show on Tuesday, and I asked him about Joe Milton, and he said, Bazooka Joe. He said, man, this guy has a strong arm, probably one of the strongest arms in the draft, but he was overthrowing a lot of guys on Tuesday. So he didn't have a very good day. Doesn't mean he can't have a very good day, but he didn't have a very good day on Tuesday. So that's definitely a guy that I want to pay attention to. Again, I want to see what the bounce back is like. I don't expect everyone to have a day every single day, but how does it bounce back? After a bad day, how do you bounce back? It looked like, according to Teron, he was trying to throw the ball super hard, trying to throw it deep to everybody, right? Trying to show off his arm strength. And he wasn't on the same page with the wide receivers, which, of course, is going to be a little more difficult since you've never played with these wide receivers before. So you've got to, get some chemistry with them. But it seemed like that Milton was overthrowing everybody. So I want to see how he matures, how maybe he calms down and plays throughout the rest of the week. Of course, the practices mean more than the game does on Saturday. How about the offensive line, the big uglies? Let's give them some love. Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. This guy's 6'7", 328 pounds, 9 starts at right tackle. Now, obviously, there's no stats really on the offensive lineman. I mean, really just kind of want to give you a little bit of a rundown of what the draft guide, not draft guide, but really kind of like just a few notes on him. 1-year starter at right tackle inside of Oklahoma's 54-46 run pass split, RPO heavy, multiple run schemes centered around the zone and counter concepts, a towering and long frame with a lean, evenly dispersed build, very good athletic ability. And what really makes me excited about Tyler Guyton, right tackle. 1-year starter at right tackle, right? Multiple run scheme around the zone and the counter concepts, RPO heavy, right? And we all know what Antonio Pierce wants to do. He wants to be able to run the rock. So I look at a guy like Tyler Guyton. If the Raiders stay there at 13, he may be available, right? He might even be a little bit, lower in round 1 available for them to go get if they so choose to do that, if they decide not to go quarterback at 13 or decide to move up and go get a quarterback. I think that's an option there. Tyler Guyton, the offensive lineman out of Oklahoma. How about on the defensive side of things? How about the big uglies on the other side? You got to always take care of the trenches, right? Got a couple Texas guys. How about Byron Murphy II? 6'1", 308 pounds, played 13 games, contributed on 397 snaps, recorded 13 tackles, 5 assists, making 19 stops, and as a pass rusher, produced 40 total pressures, including 30 quarterback hits, 4 QB hits, 30 quarterback hurries, 4 QB hits, and 5 sacks on the season. That's Byron Murphy II. Of course, the University of Texas made it into the college football playoffs. Their defense was really good, and that defensive line and the interior in particular, they were really nasty. Not only did they have Byron Murphy II, a guy that I'm definitely paying attention to, they had Tavondre Sweat, right? This guy is also a defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman, 6'4", 362 pounds. That is a tank. That is a monster. 6'4", 362. He had 2 sacks on the season, Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, even caught a touchdown pass in the Big 12 championship game. Also, him and Byron Murphy together in the interior of that defensive line really helped make that thing go. Those are 2 of the best interior defensive linemen in the country. So watch out for Sweat and Murphy. They're going to go off the board pretty early in the draft. But I think either one of those guys would be guys to look at if you're the Raiders and you need to get that interior pressure. You want to beat that guy who's playing in Super Bowl 58, Patrick Mahomes. You got to get pressure. You got to get it up the gut, be able to plug those holes up so he can't step up. And then in the pocket, you never know what he's going to do. Throw the ball, run the ball, whatever the case may be, you got to shut that down. So Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, both guys out of Texas on the interior defensive line. Those would be nice additions for the Silver and Black. I'll be paying attention to them for sure. Last guy, this guy is a really good player. Latu. I'm gonna get his first name wrong. Last name is Latu. It's easy to say his last name, from UCLA, the outside linebacker. But it's like Latu. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, right? Latu, the offensive or the outside linebacker, got me all jacked up now. He's a hell of a story. This guy started out at Washington. He had a sack at Washington. Then he had a neck injury. So he basically was medically retired in 2020. Then he was cleared by the UCLA doctors, played in 2021, played in 2022, played in 2023. The guy has 24 career sacks, and half a sack came at Washington. So, he's got, like I said, 23 and a half sacks at UCLA. The neck injury, obviously, when he gets to the combine, is something to pay attention to. But this guy is expected to be like a top 10 pick. And I hate that I said his first name wrong. Latu. How about that? Latu. Something like that. I'll get it right. Before the draft, I'll get it right. No disrespect to my guy. But he's a hell of a player. And it's crazy. There were so many really good players that you saw in the final year of the Pac-12. Right. So, being able to pay attention to Washington and Oregon a lot, obviously was able to see Latu a lot and saw what he was able to do and get to the quarterback from the outside linebacker position. He's a heck of a player to pay attention to as well. He's out at the Senior Bowl, and of course, I'm sure he'll have plenty of conversations with all the teams out there, including the Raiders. So that's what I got for you, even though I butchered the hell out of his name. Sorry, Latu. I'll get it, man. I'll get it right. I promise. I'm working on it. Matter of fact, at some point, I might say his name every single show just to prove that I can. Right. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. You're off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. And we'll get to that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And, well, happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. And if you're like me, of course, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but also bets for what player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. They got so many player prop bets to check out for Super Bowl 58. It is incredible. You just got to check out the app FanDuel. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more of FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with a text this time from TM Jones right here in Vegas. Hey, Q, love the show. Can't agree more with your take on mobile quarterbacks. Mobility and sack avoidance are the keys to good quarterback play. Jared Goff isn't really mobile, but he's third in sack avoidance right behind Mahomes and Allen. O'Connell's 18th, tied with Minshew. He's most likely a career backup. I want all the callers who think O'Connell could be a legit starter for the Raiders to be honest with themselves and ask, can you honestly see him leading the Raiders to a playoff victory against Mahomes or Allen, Burrow, Jackson, or Stroud for that matter? Come on, man. You need a legit quarterback to beat KC and still probably need some help. That is also why I think it's a pipe dream to think Bears or Commanders will trade away their first-round picks. Maybe the Pats, if they're not sold on Daniels or whoever they're rated as their third quarterback, is worthy. A number 3 overall. Anyway, keep up the good work. That's from TM Jones in Vegas, and thanks so much. And, yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's a conversation I've been having about quarterbacks that can use their legs, guys with some mobility, guys that can get out of there, pick up a first down, extend the drive, whatever the case may be. Even, hell, use your legs as a weapon if so be it, right? If that's what they choose to do. But, you got to be able to get out of the pocket as far as I'm concerned, right? And Jared Goff, the divisional round of the playoffs, there was 8 quarterbacks that were competing, and he was the only one that didn't have any mobility. He was the only one that was literally a statue. And so, again, I like what Aiden O'Connell did for the Raiders the final 9 games of the season. I think he showed that he can go in there and win a game or two if need be, but I don't think he's the guy that you want as your long-term starter. But that's just me, right? I know some people feel some kind of way. I'm not trying to disrespect Aiden O'Connell again for his rookie year, getting in there and getting thrown right into the fire and doing what he did the final 9 games. I think he did a really good job. But again, I'm with you. I think that a quarterback with some sense of mobility is something that's needed. And, the thing about it is, talking about the Bears not trading away their number 1 overall pick, I'm not saying the Raiders are going to go up to number 1 and get that. If I'm the Bears, I probably would trade it away, though. I don't think that the Bears are a team that's right there on the cusp of going to the playoffs. Could you imagine how much they'll get for that number 1 overall pick and what they can do with that and how much more they can have that team kind of put together quick, fast, and hurry? And then on top of that, if they trade Justin Fields, on top of that, man, they really could be in a great position. Maybe they can get one of these quarterbacks like a Penix or a Nix or someone, else later on in maybe the first round or so. That's not, Caleb Williams, but man, now you have all this extra, weapons and draft picks to be able to build that team. If I'm the Bears and Ryan Poles the GM, I would definitely think about it. But, more likely than not, they'll probably just grab Caleb Williams at number 1. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Big E in the 209. He's calling to talk about the quarterback position and what the Raiders can do, and also chimes in on the OC search. Here he is, Big E in the 209.
What up, Q? This is Big E from the 209, man. I just was calling in to chime in on the quarterback conversation really fast, because I know we're going to be having that for a while, and the OC searching for OC position. Now, I was reading some reports that Chip Kelly was in the mix for the OC for the Raiders. I was reading that. What do you think about that, Q? I mean, he was offensively, he was great in Oregon, and in UCLA. I've looked at a couple of things. He's not looking too bad. I think his problem was he was just not a leader of men, which a lot of people which a lot of teams need nowadays. So just wondering what you think of that move, going for somebody like Chip Kelly and making a NFL return. Also, as far as the QB conversation, after watching, and I get it, how you're going for Jaden Daniels, and keep in mind that whole mobility versus scrambling, we know exactly what you're talking about. Anybody that's not just trying to troll knows exactly what you're talking about. So, and so do I. We're looking for that type. You just want them to be, let's call scrambling for some people's sake. You want them to scramble in the pocket and create passing. I completely understand that. I don't want necessarily, and from watching these last two games, in the championship games, I don't want a Lamar Jackson type, closer to Lamar Jackson type, which that's what Jaden Daniels, I feel like, is. He's closer to that Lamar Jackson type that relies on his legs a lot more in athleticism, which is fine, but I'd rather have that closer to Mahomes, Brock Purdy, like in that area, not comparing those two, but just saying how they bounce around in the pocket and they look to throw first, even C.J. Stroud. I think after watching this, I really like that more. Not any knock on those other two, because keep in mind, if we got Jaden Daniels, I would not be mad at all. But, it just seems like it wasn't working for him. But anyway, just let me know your thoughts on that, Q. Chip Kelly, and then, a little bit closer to the Purdy side of things on the mobility. Love what you do, man. Have a good one.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, Chip Kelly, I'm not really feeling that. Right? I haven't seen his system work in the NFL consistently, right? For a sustained amount of time. He had success in Philly for a minute, not really in San Francisco, right? He got fired pretty quickly. Maybe it was because he was the head coach and not the OC. I don't know. I think that his style, is really more of a college coach. That up tempo that he tries to run all the time. I don't think the NFL players are feeling that all the time, right? I mean, I know that they can go up tempo for a little while, but I don't think that they really want to do that consistently. Again, I feel like that is super college concepts, but maybe he does resurface in the NFL. I just think that he's probably better off as a college coach. As far as the quarterback, you're spot on about Daniels. He's way closer to Lamar, and if you don't want that much wiggle, that's okay, right? I mean, he is way more closer to Lamar. I mean, he had over 1,100 yards rushing in 2023, right? If that's not, Lamar Jackson light, I don't know what is, right? So if that's too much wiggle, he might not be the guy for you. That's okay. There's a Knicks out there. There's a Penix out there. There's other guys that have a little bit of wiggle that can get out of there. That's not going to sit there and, take a bunch of sacks and, lose a ton of yards and not be able to pick up a first down when there's green grass right there, that don't have to worry about being the 1,100-yard rusher either, right? At the end of the day, you definitely want a guy that's got more arm talent than he has leg talent. You want a guy that you really believe can beat you by throwing the ball, from anywhere, right? Just like C.J. Stroud. Like, you have no doubt he can make every throw. You want a quarterback that can make every throw. I just want to see a quarterback that can make every throw, but also is not afraid to get up out of there if need be. So I mentioned why I'm a big Jaden Daniels fan. A lot of it is because of his ability and also his familiarity with Antonio Pierce. But thanks so much for the call, Big E. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Napoleon. Says, yo, Q, it's Napoleon here in Charlotte, North Carolina. How about this guy for an OC? Hugh Jackson. Got to admit, the Raiders' offense was very productive when he was the head coach some time ago. Would love to see him with toys as Adams, Myers, Jacobs, Tucker, and Mayer. Think this offense would be unstoppable. Let me know your thoughts on that. Peace and blessings. That's Napoleon from Charlotte, North Carolina. And I've had a few people float Hugh Jackson my way. I think that ship has sailed. I really do. I don't think, and I don't know this, but I don't think that everything ended very well with Hugh Jackson and the Raiders, right? When I reached out to Hugh to get him on the radio station to talk about Al Davis, he responded and was like, yeah, to talk Al, sure, no problem. Talk anything else? Yeah, probably not. So, and I know he's been on some podcasts lately talking about would like to help the Raiders return to glory, and maybe things are better now. I just think that ship has sailed. But you're spot on about what he was able to do as the offensive play caller, man. That dude had guys that after they left the Raiders, they were basically barely hung around the league. And, he had them shining by his offensive play calling. He was very, very creative. Just somehow, some way, things got a little sideways with Hugh Jackson and the Raiders. And I don't know if that has ever been repaired. So that's something that, it's got to be, if that was to come to fruition, that'd be a Hugh Jackson and like a Mark Davis conversation. And then maybe that come to fruition. But thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. How about Jackson? He's a first-time listener, at least this past season. He's calling to speak on the quarterback position once the OC and the rest of the staff is actually put in place. Here he is, Jackson.
Hey, this is Jackson, first-time listener this season, lifetime Raider fan. It's been fun season listening into the pod and obviously with, ending on a high note. But my question is, I understand first, we go get our offensive coordinator, we get our coaching staff dialed, because I know some have preferences among either the rookie quarterbacks or whatever, or their play style. But once that's set, is Russell Wilson that, is he a bomb? Are we shooting ourselves in the foot trying to go get him? In my mind, there's no way. He's a good player, maybe. Is he toxic? I mean, are we hurting ourselves by going and getting him? He is going to get the veteran minimum that first year. We go get a lineman or another piece with that 13th pick, maybe get another quarterback later on and go get Russ. He's in a tough situation in Denver. Maybe he wants to prove himself. He wants to be in Vegas. In my mind, that sets us up for next year pretty well, and then I think it could translate to a couple years. But yeah, I've been sitting on this. Obviously, I like the higher up, those top 3 quarterbacks in the draft, but didn't know what your thoughts were on Russell Wilson. Why not go for him? I mean, if we're set on a rookie, let's go get him. But this seems like a pretty big win if we are able to get him and build elsewhere at 13. Let me know.
Jackson, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, man. Glad you enjoyed the season. Hopefully you stick around for more seasons to come. But as far as the quarterback position, I don't really think that Russell Wilson's an option, or at least he's not my favorite. Let's put it like that. Like, I'm not going to ever say that never. I don't know how he fits in that locker room. I do know that there's plenty of different personalities in that locker room, and they all seem to make it work. As long as he didn't come in that locker room with the kind of attitude that he had when he was in Denver, where he's, holier than thou or better than everyone else in that locker room, he probably would find a way to fit in and be just fine. Denver is going to pay a lot of his salary when they let him go. And so whoever signs him is going to be, basically like a league minimum. It'd be very minimal money. So like I said, I don't want to say never would that be an option. He could be a veteran. He could be a guy that the Raiders had around for a year. I still think if you were to sign a Russell Wilson and you have an Aiden O'Connell, I still think you draft a guy. I really do, because you're still looking for and trying to find your long-term solution. Russ is not the long-term solution. Maybe he can help Aiden O'Connell. Maybe he can help a rookie out, kind of be a mentor, and also, do some of the heavy lifting early on. But I don't see Russell Wilson as a guy that, even if he did, get a job with the Raiders, I don't think he'd be around for very long. But again, that's like I said, I don't want to ever say no and never say never, but I just would say like highly unlikely that Russell Wilson would be the quarterback of the Silver and Black. I know many outlets have predicted that that's what's going to happen, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. If he does, it'll, like I said, be a short-term solution. But Jackson, thanks for the call, my man. Appreciate you. Hopefully it's not your last call. Finally, we'll close out with a text from Raider Ed. What's up, Q? Good shows regarding the quarterback position. I agree that Daniels would be the best choice for the Raiders. I'm not sold on trying to get Cousins or Wilson or any current available NFL quarterback. If the Raiders can't get one of the target quarterbacks in the draft, how about they build a monster offensive line through the draft and free agency? Doing that would make the mobility issue a moot point. Give O'Connell time and protection. He can make most of every throw. Not sure what his ceiling is. Thanks. That's from Raider Ed. Thank you for the text, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, ideally, the Raiders do build a monster offensive line this offseason. One, for whatever quarterback's there, to protect the hell out of them and make things a whole lot easier. Also open up more of a run game for, if it's Josh Jacobs, Amir White, if it's whoever it is in the backfield, that makes it a whole lot better. But again, the Raiders need to get back to having that bully offensive line that can get downhill, and, teams know that this is coming and it doesn't matter. They can't stop it because that offensive line is too dominant. They need to do that regardless, right? And I've said it before and people have told me, no, I don't really like that idea, but there's a chance. There is a chance. I don't know how big of a chance. There's a chance that this staff can look at Aiden O'Connell and say, you know what? We like what he did through 9 games. Let's give him the whole offseason. Let's go ahead and build the offensive line like you suggested. The weapons are in place. Let's give him all training camp. Let's give him the playbook. Let's tell him, hey, the team is yours. We're going to bring in a backup as well, but the team is yours. Don't sweat anything. You're going to get all first-team reps during training camp, preseason, all that good stuff, and you're going to be the bona fide starter day one, in 2024. There's a chance that they could do that. Now, I don't think that that's likely going to happen, but there's a chance. And some people were good with that. Some people were like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Others were like, hell no. No, you need more. And me personally, I think that you need better as well. I think you need to get a quarterback that's more consistent. Even going back to college, that was the biggest issue with him, the C word, consistency. He was up and down a lot. Now, if he can continue to grow and get better, I do feel like he did that towards the end of the season. Maybe that's something they look at. Maybe that's an option that they take. But again, in a draft that's very quarterback heavy, and I think there's a lot of different options, a lot of different flavors, whatever you choose, like Baskin Robbins, they got 31 flavors. Whatever you choose, I think is there, and you should go get it when you have the chance. But again, that's just me. But Raider Ed, thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. I got a call from Raider Wells in Kansas City we'll get to tomorrow. Frank in Albuquerque will definitely hit your text tomorrow, plus a whole lot more. Maybe we'll be talking about a Raiders offensive coordinator. Still has not been announced, so we wait, right? I'm surprised that they don't have one as they're in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, but again, we'll wait. Antonio Pierce is not in Mobile. Tom Telesco is not in Mobile, so maybe they're sealing the deal on an offensive coordinator. Maybe they're waiting for Clint Kubiak, right? I mentioned it the other day. They do have to wait till after the Super Bowl to interview him. Maybe they like him a lot and they want to talk to him, and they're going to wait till after till February 12th to talk to him. Well, maybe February 11th after the Super Bowl's over. Hell, he'll already be in Vegas. Maybe they'll say, hey, man, why don't you come on down here to Raiders Way in Henderson and have a conversation. And maybe he never leaves. Maybe he never gets back to the Bay. Maybe he stays in Las Vegas. I'm not too sure, but I'm assuming it feels like sooner rather than later they should make a decision on their offensive coordinator. So coming up tomorrow, we'll get to those texts as I mentioned. We'll have news and notes of the day, of course, and plenty more conversation and check-ins from the Senior Bowl and also the Shrine Bowl. We'll do it all as it is officially the offseason for the Silver and Black. Until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.